My name's Archie Moore. I'm standing inside my exhibition at Gertrude Contemporary called Dwelling Victorian Issue. It's the fourth version of this large-scale installation work that's my memories of my childhood home. Twice I've done it in a house and twice I've done it in an art institution or art gallery. Lived in a small country town 300 kilometres west of Brisbane, being one of two Aboriginal families, both on the opposing fringes of the town, living in houses that were very inadequate in lots of different ways. Too cold in the winter, too hot in the summer. They had holes in the walls and would sink into the ground a little bit every time it rained. So the show's about my memories of home, but also memory in general. Not everything in the show is exactly what I remember, but I think that's talks to the nature of memory, where it's reconstructive, it might change over time and things might be added to the memory and some things might disappear, and the fallibility of memory. I'm trying to involve as many senses as possible, so when you're into, you'll be looking at things, you'll be listening to things, you'll be smelling and touching. A lot of the items in the exhibition are my own personal items that I've kept for like 40 years, and some of the larger, heavier items like the old fridge and the stove, etc. from Gertrude's sourcing on Marketplace and Hard Rubbish Day. My practice is very broad in what mediums I use. I've worked with a perfumer for an exhibition that was about memory, so each perfume bottle was a memory of my father or a first day at school. And I've worked on paper sculptures out of books. Sometimes I'm in a band with a few other artists doing music. Sometimes I'm doing painting. I get bored doing one medium or one approach, or if someone invites me into a show, one of the first things I'll think about is what kind of medium would suit the rationale of the show. This is one of two bedrooms. It's not anyone's particular bedroom, it's just indicative of bedroom in my childhood home. But this is more so my father's room, that's his actual beanie there. The idea is just immersive, interactive exhibition. You can open suitcases and look in them, and you'll see there's some regalia from the Royal Antediluvian Order of Buffaloes, which is a secret society my father was in. So I always talked about socialism as a great idea, so I've got these old tourist brochures of the USSR. The paint by numbers I found in a shop that was exactly the same thing I painted when I was maybe early teens, but I never got to finish mine. Maybe that's the ADD coming through. And we worked with a carpenter to build all the walls, and Gertrude to change the space from 2 galleries into 8 galleries, essentially. This is more like my room. It's got actual drawings that I've kept for 40 years. Pretty typical teenage boy stuff that's violent and nude women. Some of my books as well that I read back then. Some of my clothes, a very similar school uniform look to what I had. We found this cupboard like 3 days ago, just up the road. This is the schoolroom, my memory of the schoolroom, or a fragment of that memory. Exact same chairs. Film I got from YouTube, from Queensland State Archives, which is something we would have watched in the class from the Department of Education, Queensland. This one's about the virtues of mining.
When it is dry, it becomes uranium oxide and is ready for packing and export.
So the show's about my personal memories and how they bump up against the memory of Australia, the history of Australia. Next to the film is a corrugated iron hut, which is a depiction of my grandmother's residence where she lived. She had dirt floor, didn't have a proper floor, very few items, nothing of value, pretty much poverty. I always ask the question about how did my grandparents get to live in a corrugated iron huts with dirt floors when everyone else in the town had houses. Like, how did they end up like that? That's a good question. There's going to be some items in the school desk. Children's book I remember from primary school with a very racist name, Sambo, and depictions of African people. That's kind of just talking about subtle racism that gets embedded in you from a young age. And when we go into the lounge room, we'll see some TV shows I used to watch as a kid, and some of them had similar racist and sexist kind of connotations.
Kulalaka kap tipampun.
He says he's going walkabout to the time of the dreaming.
Whoops, opened the wrong door. My memory of the lounge room, similar kind of couch, similar kind of poster hung crookedly on the wall, some faraway place that was way beyond our means to actually get to because we had no money. There's a hubcap on the wall which is like a decoration. And the TV has lots of shows that I remember watching. I wasn't a very social person. I didn't like anyone really, so I just stayed home and read books and did drawings, watched TV, listened to music. It's a bit of escapism. So this is the kitchen area. We had lino like this on the floor. All the chairs are very similar. The colour was also very similar to what we had on the outside of the house. We had a wood-fired stove, similar to this gas version. It didn't contain the smoke very well, but it blackened all the kitchen behind the stove and the ceiling. You can see a photo of the actual kitchen on the wall there. So my father was 62 when I was born. He was born in 1908. Didn't know much about his family at all. About 3 years ago, I've got interested in family history research, and I've found a lot more about him than I would ever know, including all these places he lived at, which most of them he never talked about. Apparently I was locked in the fridge when I was very small and couldn't get out. But I have no memory of that, so it's in the show because it's a absent memory or something, yeah. This is bathroom, obviously a lot larger than the real bathroom. And when you enter this space, you'll be confronted with the strong smell of Dettol, which reminds me of having baths in Dettol sometimes. And I think that is because my mother, maybe something that she passed down from her parents, this fear of authorities coming to take away Aboriginal children because they're not being looked after, not clean. You know, if the kid's dirty, they're not being looked after. But also we had alternating water from the lagoon, which is brown, fresh water, and bore water, like alternating days of those two different sources of water. I got that crocodile skin wallpaper on the wall. My mother used to always say the skin is going scaly because it's not being cleaned, which was an exaggeration. Another transgenerational trauma and fears being passed from my grandparents, who were harassed by the protector of Aborigines and just surveilled and followed around the state wherever they went. Weren't allowed to marry each other without permission, weren't allowed to associate with other Aboriginal people. There was a lot of that coming down from my grandparents. And I think some of that may even be genetically passed down, like anxiety maybe, because I have anxiety. There's a peephole on the wall as well, which goes into Gertrude's public toilet. It's all about viewing, being watched, surveilled, little privacy. This room is a camera obscura I've built for the exhibition. Camera obscura is a Latin word that just means dark room. It's a very old invention, the precursor to photography. But it relates to another memory of mine of the front door of our house had a small crack in the door. I noticed this moving image being projected on the wall beside the door, and I was totally mesmerised by this, like, what was this thing? And it was kind of like a bit of magic in the low socio-economic situation we were in. So it's another form of escapism, like watching the TV. I'm trying to get the viewer to be in my shoes, kind of thing, to experience my memories, but that's an impossibility. So it's that fracture in myself and the other person, which is the main kind of theme of the work. The impossibility of that happening, like impossibility of knowing you have the same experience as another person. I used to think that was like a metaphor for the failure of reconciliation in Australia between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people, that maybe we can't really fully understand or know each other. The viewer, they'll be immersed into my world, but they'll have their own readings of everything.